Hello and welcome to the channel. I'm Bear and we've got another faction focus. This time it's with Cathay. I want to start off by apologising with the delay on the videos for anyone who does watch them regularly. I really appreciate you guys, but unfortunately my whole household come down with COVID, so things have been slowed down a lot. I will try my best to start cramming out some videos as fast as I can, but as always, this is just a general overview, nothing too in-depth. We will go more in-depth if people would like. Please feel free to ask me any questions below, and I will answer them as best as I can. If you have any suggestions for videos or any requests, again, please do put them below. And with that, really, let's just get on with it, shall we? So the choices of Legendary Lord as Cathay. First up, we have Miao Ying, or Meow Meow, as people have lovingly started calling her. Not sure if people are aware that that's a nickname for a drug here, but hey, that's a conversation for another day. She's very heavily focused on ranged units. We will cover that more in a moment. Her faction effects are -2 to corruption, leadership plus 10% when fighting against demons of chaos, ammunition plus 20% for missile units, upkeep -50% for missile units in her army. Harmony is +3 of yin. Now, the second legendary lord is Zhao Ming. He's the angry Iron Dragon brother dude. He's more focused towards economy and melee, as we can see through some of his effects. Maximum cargo capacity is +20% for caravans. Hero recruit rank +5 for alchemists. Upkeep -25% for ogre mercenary units, armor +15 for melee units, magic item drop chances 100% increase, upkeep -25% for melee units in his army, and he has the harmony of +3 yang. So first of all, Miao Ying and her skills and stats. She has better melee attack than her brother, with magical attack on top of that as well, which is always nice. She can turn into a giant dragon, which, again, is always nice. There is a penalty to turning into a dragon though, which means you drop the abilities that she has at that point in time. So you kind of need to balance when you want to be turning into a dragon and not just spamming the crap out of it. She starts off with 2 spells, Earthblood, a replenishment spell, and Storm of Shadows, a speed reduction spell. She has 2 interesting passives. Mastery of Elemental Winds, which is when 2 or more units in the same army share this attribute. Intensity increases the power of spells cast. She also has the Disdain of Dragons, which gives a melee effect of -8 attack. And that's pretty damn useful. So, her skills. Her skills are heavily focused on increasing ranged firepower, as well as getting a few spells, but nothing massive. They're kind of balanced between a couple of healing and mainly buffing up your units. Blue tree and red tree are pretty much what you would expect, and her trees, again, like I just said, are almost entirely about her ranged units in her army, as well as giving herself a bit more healing power. And that's kind of it with Miao Ying. So now on to Zhao Ming, the Iron Dragon, his skills and stats. As I said earlier, his sister is more of the melee lord, he is more of the spellcaster lord. As you can see, his melee attack is less than what hers was, which is to be expected. He has access to the Law of Metal, thank God I said that right this time, giving you 2 spells to begin with, Plague of Rust and Dragon's Breath, which is a very self-explanatory spell. Plague of Rust, however, gives a minus armor of 30, which is quite nice. Again, can turn into a dragon, but he's going to be even more picky about doing it, because you're probably going to want to be using the magic more than the dragon. Because let's face it, the Law of Metal was relatively strong in Warhammer 2, with good Golden Boy Gelt, and it's not really changed in 3 either. It's still pretty damn good when you're using it right. Now, his skills are the polar opposite of what his sister is, which you would kind of expect. He has the middle tree going straight down the Law of Metal, which makes sense. Red and blue lines are exactly as you would expect. And then the rest of his abilities are pretty much buffing up his own melee strength, so he can kind of stand on the same ground as her, but not quite. The most interesting part is that he will get the Master of Alchemy later on, which then goes into basically you can pick where you want to go with it. You can either have flaming attacks, you can have armor piercing attacks, or you can have Master of Alchemy poison. So, yeah, you get poison, which is quite nice. And that's pretty much it. So the first mechanic I want to touch on with Cathay is the harmony mechanic. This is the balance of yin and yang, and depending on which legendary lord you've picked, you're going to find yourself, leaning towards one side of the balance. Meow Meow, Meow Ying, whatever you want to call her, she's more towards yin, and Zhao is more towards yang. Now, this is reflected in the units that they like, because Meow Ying is more ranged, therefore they are yin-based units as well, and melee units are yang-based units, as, Zhao is yang himself. You can balance your meter out by having a balanced army, kind of like this, although this isn't balanced. Let's be realistic, this is not balanced, this is almost entirely yin. But hey, that doesn't affect it too much, because actually they only give you 1 point of yin, which is not really a whole lot, if I'm honest. The biggest benefit you're going to see, or biggest way of making a benefit, is actually recruiting lords. So let's say, for example, I'm heavily into yin. I'd want to recruit a lord, which will then balance it out into yang. Each lord gives +3 instead of +1, which, heroes and units give. So recruiting the lord is actually the easiest way of doing it. The reason you want this is because of the harmony buffs that you're going to get. You will get diplomatic relations +20 with Cathay, construction cost -20% for all buildings, growth +40, income from yang buildings +25%, income from yin buildings +25%, control +8, corruption -5 all provinces, and an army ability of ancestral warriors in all armies. Now, being out of balance is not terrible, but you will see that it's much more beneficial to be in balance than it is out of it. You'll find if you are heavier into yang, you'll start receiving a penalty on yang buildings. Yin buildings will receive a bigger buff, but it's not really worth it because you start losing out on everything else. So keeping things in harmony is really, really useful. Now, techs can also help with this, and we will cover that in a moment, but harmony is also transferred onto the battlefield. What will happen is you'll find both your ranged and melee units have the little symbols of yin and yang above their heads. When they have the full matched symbol of harmony, because, they're in range of the other units, they suddenly receive a buff to, melee attack, melee defense, range, reload speed, a whole plethora of things, which is really useful. So you're going to find you're going to be wanting to group your armies up quite frequently as Cathay, because spreading them out across the battlefield is just going to hurt how well they can perform. So the tech tree, as I mentioned earlier, you can kind of balance out yin and yang, your harmony with the tech, but it's going to take a lot of work. So again, lords are your best answer to that problem. You can see that this tree is very much, symmetrical, like the whole balance thing. There's a theme here, isn't there? Now, generally speaking, the middle tree, in fact, not even generally speaking, if you go straight down the middle, there is no effect to the harmony whatsoever. Literally, you're safe all the way down the middle. The problem lies in when you start wanting to go on one side of the tree. As you can see, the bottom side is heavily focused on yin, the top, yang. So you'll find, as you progress down, let's say you want yin hex, you're going to start filling out this tree, but you're also going to want to start filling out the top part of the tree to avoid going too heavy into yin and causing yourself a big headache with the harmony system. It's quite interesting because you can either say screw it and recruit loads of lords and probably tank your economy, or you can spend a little bit more time being picky and trying to find the most optimal way without destroying your economy buffs, which is, probably the way that I would play it. So the Wujin Compass. Now, this is a big mechanic of Cathay, one that's relatively easy to understand, and yet you get access to very early on. Within the first few turns, you can actually determine the direction of the compass you want it to point. The whole thing is pretty much based on balance, just like everything else with Cathay. And as you can see at the moment, I've got it set up pointing towards Celestial Lake. What this means is I'm getting a set amount of buffs. So I'm getting growth plus 15 per region in Cathay. And because the arrow is pointing to the Celestial Lake, I also get the additional benefits of income from all buildings and the chances of Wind of Magic increasing. Now, the little bar here is something that's quite interesting. What happens is, after 5 turns, let's say I want to put it back to the Great Bastion, this bar will actually slowly empty over time. I forgot my words for a second then. That's great. And what happens is, this means when I swapped over to the Great Bastion, I don't instantly lose the growth buff. Instead, over time, it filters down. So, from 15, it'll go to 8, and then it'll go to 3, and then it'll eventually cut out. But, realistically, if you're just popping between 2 different points on the compass, you'll probably never hit this point, and you'll always be getting at least the lowest bar, which is pretty damn nice, because you can have a growth bonus whilst getting defensive supplies and casualty replenishment at the same time, which is a really, really useful buff to have. Then when you change it over to the Great Bastion, you'd get active effects such as the Great Bastion threat decreasing of minus 2% per turn. That's something we will cover in a moment. Recruitment cost decrease, which is nice, and also an army ability. Now, the bottom 2 kind of feel like a bit of a panic button, if you ask me. Warpstone Desert will Winds of Magic steadily decrease in strength. Corruption is minus 4 per region in Cathay. Enemy leadership is minus 6 per region in Cathay to local enemy armies. So that's kinda when you've got a lot of enemies rushing you, I would see. And when you want to clear out Chaos Corruption quickly because it's causing you too many rebellions. And with the Dragon Emperor's Wrath, you get control, which could be useful if you've just taken regions. And then you get the Dragon Emperor's Wrath. Extreme attrition applied to armies beyond the Great Bastion. So that kind of could be used if you know that there is an invasion on its way and they've stacked up a fair units against you. You could use it to try to hinder them more, but then you're probably going to use the Great Bastion over that anyway, because the defensive supplies and the other buffs that you'll see in the next little section. Okay, so what makes Cathay Cathay? Well, one part of it, a very big and strong part of it, is the Great Bastion, of course. Now, in Meow Meow's campaign, or Meow Ying, or whatever you want to call it, you will start off near the Snake Gate. I'm currently holding it because I'm 27 turns in, but you don't start off that way. It's broken, and you'll have to run over to repair it as quickly as you can, because, well, you kind of don't want chaos pouring in. That's generally not a good idea. There are 3 points to the Great Bastion: Snake Gate, Dragon Gate, and Turtle Gate. You'll probably end up holding all 3 at some point in your campaign, either through Conquering or Confederation, because Confederation is actually relatively easy with Cathay, which is pretty damn nice, and you're gonna want to do that at some point. The gates themselves are actually relatively strong, and they give you access to a good unit. I say good, you know, a lot of people will disagree with me on this. Pretty early on. You get the Terracotta Sentinel at level 4 instead of level 5 in your main settlement buildings, which is, you know, a fairly big difference. And that's quite easy. It could be a bit of a clutch when you need it. I mean, who's not going to want a giant dude stamping on everyone? Now, the Great Bastion comes with the threat level, which you can reduce in the previous mechanic that we just looked at, the Wujin Compass. You can also reduce it by wandering out and slapping the Chaos forces on the other side of the wall. Now, the problem with that is, obviously, this is entirely Chaos Lands, and you're going to be taking attrition at pretty much every single point, so you're going to want to, you know, gauge your battles well. Beyond that, they're very good defensive points. You can make them incredibly powerful through various buildings. You can increase your growth, your casualty replenishment rate. You can put military buildings in there. You can put buildings in that increase your defensive supplies. They give you more ammunition during sieges. So you can make them into a bit of a powerhouse for Chaos to have to try and cross. Which kind of is the point, isn't it? I think that really covers the Great Bastion. It's a mechanic that I do enjoy, and actually, I'll be honest, the thing I like the most about it is the visual aspect. You know, I kind of want this in more Total War games, if I'm honest. Maybe not this exact one, but give us more things like this. This is nice. So, the last mechanic that we will cover, the Ivory Road. Now, this is the backbone of Cathay's economy, and it will boost your economy an absolutely ridiculous amount if you are doing it right, which, honestly, there's not really many wrong ways of doing it. As long as you're careful and you plan where you're going, you're going to be raking in gold at a ridiculous rate. Essentially, you start off with one caravan at the beginning, and you're able to recruit more. However, you can only send one out at a time. So having more than one is useful, because when you send one out, it does take time for them to come back. It's not instantaneous. So you could just instantly send out a second caravan or a third caravan, you know, which is really, really useful. You're not having to wait for cooldowns to start the journey off again, because sometimes they can take a little while. But enough of that. The way it works is you pick an end destination to begin with. You can see here the little treasury boxes, which will show you how much you will get for reaching that destination. And along the road, it highlights the level of threat that you will have. Low, medium, high. You can kind of understand where that's going. You pick a high route, you're going to get more people trying to ambush your caravan, trying to steal all the shiny stuff themselves. These battles aren't automatic, you do fight them yourself. Each caravan has an army that can increase in size over time. As you can see, I actually have some Kislev units in this one because of certain events that popped up during the journey. You will get to pick between different units, whether you want ranged, whether you want melee, whether you want to get an attack buff, whether you want to increase your carry capacity, or, you know, various different things. Now, the caravan lords themselves as well are slightly different in the fact that their skill trees are focused towards, you know, being a caravan lord and having better scales, which gives you a better exchange rate, if you will, and also a better cargo capacity, meaning you can carry more to your place that you're selling it to and make more money. It's all really self-explanatory. It's a really nice mechanic that actually, it does work very well, and you will get a lot of benefit from it. It can be a bit tedious in times if you're focusing somewhere else and it suddenly drags you into a battle down here, but you get the hang of it relatively fast, and hey, who's gonna argue at getting an extra 8 grand in gold in a few turns? Not me. Okay, so an overview of Cathay. Well, they're relatively fun to players on the campaign. Very strong on the economy game, as you can imagine. You know, the whole trade road thing, which is nice, means you can field some pretty impressive armies relatively early on. They've got some fun units. As someone who is a ranged player, primarily, I do appreciate a lot of the units that they've got. The melee units are actually quite useful as well, and you know what, are just damn pretty. In all honesty, I mean, look at these guys. Look at them. They look so cool. Battle-wise, they hold up very well. I mean, the only issue is kind of you need to pick your battles with Cathay. Because you need to have a balanced army, you're never really going to have much of a doom stack, I don't think. I kind of feel like that's going to fall off with Cathay very quick. Although, you know, you still have a ton of ranged options that are really nice. Good melee units. So you can't really complain. It's a good all-rounder. The whole turning into a dragon thing is a big bonus feature as well, because who's not going to want to turn into a big bloody dragon? Let's be honest here, come on. But that's pretty much it. Again, this was a general overview. If you guys do want to know anything more in depth, please do let me know, and I will happily make another video on it. I will leave all the relevant links below if you want to support the channel, if you want to catch any live streams. I'm currently doing a big Nurgle campaign over on Twitch, you know, which is going really well. We've just taken our first soul from Slaanesh. Ha! screw you, weird boy. And that's it. Thank you for hanging out. Thank you for taking the time to watch this. Please do feel free to comment, leave a like, or subscribe if you want to, keep up to date with the stuff. And I will catch you in the next one, my glorious kids.